If you've been to the Pacific Northwest anytime over the last 20 years or so, you might have noticed this flag. Known as the Doug flag or the Cascadian flag, it was first designed by Portland, Oregon native Alexander Baratyk in 1994. At the time, Baratyk was a graduate student abroad in Eastern Europe who felt deeply homesick for the forests of Oregon's Willamette Valley and wanted to create a flag which represented this longing. The flag's green color represents the many forests of the region, the blue for the Salish Sea and the Pacific Ocean, white for the snow-capped mountains of the Cascade Range, and the iconic Douglas fir tree in the center, which is the state tree of Oregon. When interviewed about the flag for the Portland Occupier in 2012, Baratyk said that, quote, "The Cascadia flag conveys something more tangible than an abstract concept of demarcation of space. Unlike many flags, this is not a flag of blood, nor of the glory of a nation, but a love of the bioregion, our ecological family and its natural boundaries." Since its inception, the Cascadian flag has come to represent much more than Baratyk ever thought it would, standing as a symbol of national identity for Pacific Northwesterners and popularizing the idea of the Cascadia bioregion. The thinking is that if borders are drawn around the natural environment as opposed to somewhat arbitrarily, the culture of its inhabitants is more likely to be similar. As an Oregonian myself, I can attest to the fact that the eastern two-thirds of this state feel like a different entity entirely, and this isn't just me. The residents of eastern Oregon have grown increasingly close to Idaho, and some have adopted the idea of forming Greater Idaho, which could be a whole video on its own. The Cascadian independence movement, and I use that term very lightly, is less of a real independence movement and more of an idealized future for the Pacific Northwest in the event of the United States collapse, one which is built upon the liberal foundations of the Northwest's largest cities. So, who actually belongs in Cascadia? Since Cascadia exists more so as an idea than anything else, the borders are somewhat subjective. I've seen a million different maps of the region, and the only thing they can seem to agree on is that Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia are quintessentially Cascadian territories. According to Ryan C. Moothart, the author of Towards Cascadia, which is one of the only books dedicated to the bioregion, Cascadia, quote, "goes as far south as Cape Mendocino in Northern California and as far north as Mount Logan in Alaska. East to west, it runs from the Great Continental Divide in the northern Rocky Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. It includes the Columbia River watershed, the Fraser River watershed, and the Snake River Valley," end quote. While this map is pretty and all, I personally struggle to believe this Cascadia, as it appears to be somewhat defined by the old idea of Oregon country, irrespective of current borders, cultures, and climates. Oregon and Washington are incredibly divided by the Cascade Mountain Range, which cuts through the states north to south. On either side of this mountain range are two incredibly different natural environments, cultures, weather systems, and physical geographies. Here's how I personally would define Cascadia, with the vast majority of the territory being west of the Cascade Mountains. In my version of Cascadia, you will find a very similar culture, weather, biogeography, and physical geography regardless of where you are in the territory. The issue you're faced with when trying to define this area is that you want to create a unifying culture while still respecting the biogeography. And it's for this reason that I didn't include anything south of Roseburg, Oregon, or anything north of Vancouver Island in Canada. South of Roseburg, the environment becomes too dry, and north of Vancouver Island, the environment becomes too cold, neither of which I would consider to be a part of the Pacific Northwest. Maybe we can call south of Roseburg the state of Jefferson. Cascadia has had its most profound effects, surprisingly, on professional soccer. The Doug flag has been unofficially adopted by the Portland Timbers MLS team, as fans love to fly the flag at games and use it as a symbol to support the Timbers. In 2004, the Cascadian Cup was created, being awarded to the best professional soccer team in the Pacific Northwest. As there are only 3 soccer teams in the region, it's always a tight competition between the Portland Timbers, the Seattle Sounders, and the Vancouver Whitecaps. Though there are various notable cities within the region such as Eugene and Salem in Oregon, Tacoma and Olympia in Washington, and Victoria in British Columbia, Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver make up the vast majority of Cascadian inhabitants and essentially control the culture of the bioregion. Known for being very left-wing cities that have some unsightly problems as of late, Cascadia has been a major factor in the US Democratic Party and Canadian Liberal Party's success over the last few decades, though Canadian politics are a little confusing to me, so that might not be entirely true. As these areas are home to some of the most beautiful natural environments in the world, there is a large focus that has been placed on environmentalism and the preservation of nature within the movement. There are 8 national parks in Washington and Oregon, while British Columbia has 7, though both for Americans and Canadians living in Cascadia, the federal governments of both nations feel far away, unresponsive, and sometimes straight up apathetic towards the needs of the Pacific Northwest. While Cascadia has yet to give a real go at becoming independent, many have given half-assed attempts. In 2001, the Cascadian National Party launched a website and then promptly disappeared. On November 8, 2016, a secession referendum was proposed in Oregon following the election of Donald Trump, though all who put forward the proposal withdrew their petition within days. That same year, the Cascadia Party of British Columbia formed and nominated 2 candidates, neither of which were elected. However, in spite of all these failures, in 2021 the Cascadia Bioregional Party was established, which still exists, advocating for the independence of the Cascadia bioregion as well as social, environmental, and economic reforms. As a standalone nation, if Cascadia were to be composed of Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, the region would be home to around 17.25 million people and cover an area roughly 530,000 square miles or 1.3 million square kilometers. This would place the country as the 68th most populous worldwide, fitting in between Senegal and the Netherlands, while being the 19th largest in terms of land area between Peru and Mongolia. Economically, Cascadia's total GDP is $1.1 trillion, with the GDP per capita falling in around 69,000. This is mostly due to large businesses such as Amazon, Boeing, Microsoft, Nike, and Starbucks, which all have their home in the PNW, as well as their massive harbor economies at the Port of Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, where millions of dollars in imported goods from Asia make their way into Canada and the US daily. This GDP would place Cascadia as the world's 18th largest economy, just shy of Indonesia's 1.2 trillion GDP. Cascadia's HDI index is 0.914, placing it at the 18th spot globally between Japan and Liechtenstein. The largest city in Cascadia, Seattle, would most likely be named the capital of the region due to its centralized location and relative ease of access on the I-5 highway, which connects the vast majority of Cascadian inhabitants. Also, as a side note, there are so many alternative flags for Cascadia that I wanted to show off some before moving on to the next section of the video, so yeah. This is the flag of Socialist Cascadia, and the only difference that I've been able to find between this movement and the regular Cascadia movement is that they just want the new government of Cascadia to be socialist. There are various Cascadia pride flags which can be seen at pride parades across the Northwest to both signify one's identity as a Northwesterner and as a member of the LGBTQ+ community. Here is the Cascadian nautical flag, which is another one of Baratik's creations that he released in 2015, and I think it looks really, really good. There are also a million alt flags that people have made over the years and posted online, most of which look amazing. A lot of these were pulled from r/Vexillology, which is a great community that always seems to produce the most beautiful flags. So, will Cascadian independence ever come to fruition? Probably not. Even if Oregon and Washington were able to break free from the US and British Columbia was able to break free from Canada, the logistics of smashing 2 foreign territories together would be a headache and a half. Trying to convert everything in Oregon and Washington to metric, or everything in BC to imperial, would take a massive amount of money and resources that nobody has. In addition, with no military and a population which is highly unlikely to own firearms, the country would have no protections against outside forces outside of the natural barriers of mountains and the ocean. Also, I'm pretty sure Canada would be a little bit upset over losing access to the Pacific Ocean, and the US government might not be too happy to lose their 5th largest port. But that's pretty much all I got for today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you want to and leave a like, and let me know if you want any more of these non-shitposty type videos. Alright, bye.